Hey, Vinay, how you doing?
I'm good, Randy. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. We're really excited here. So everybody, welcome. Really excited to have Vinay Nachani with us today. He is VP Worldwide Software Sales at Cisco. And our title topic is Software Sales Success. As always, sponsored by Sales Community, home of the CRO or those aspiring to be a CRO. So for those that are members, thanks. For those that are not, Tucker will throw up a link for free membership, salescommunity.com/summerfree. And lots of great information and tidbits there, and lots of great advisory board members like Vinay. So thanks for that, Vinay. And we're also sponsored by Phone Ready Leads, who's got a really cool business. Long story short, helps improve the cold calling pickup rate. So if you're doing cold calling, typical connect rates are like 3 to 5%. They go through their swizzle and say who has a higher propensity to pick up, and turns out to be with Phone Ready Leads, and it goes up to like 20 to 30%, which is really amazing, and even more impressive results in Europe by chance. So thanks to Phone Ready Leads. So by way of introduction, Vinay lives in Paradise in Irvine, California. So certainly great spot. Is there ever a bad month or time in Southern California?
It's debatable and it's all relative, Randy. In May and June, we had a lot of morning June gloom, like cloudiness.
Oh, no.
That my wife hated, but I made the point, and I was correct, that kept us from getting too hot in the afternoon. So our peak afternoon temperature with the June gloom was like 79. But now the June gloom's gone, and it's getting up to like 89, and it's terrible. It swings between paradise and almost paradise. But also congratulations on 172 episodes. That's a lot. Like, I don't know if you ever thought you'd do that many, but well done.
Thanks. And we're actually, we stopped booking. We're actually booked out through 2031.
Oh my goodness.
Weekly, which is kind of even more crazy. But anyway, thanks for that. Vinay's a great family man, happily married, 12-year-old daughter, 3-year-old boy. So I certainly remember those stages. So very, very exciting. And we're trying to figure out, I think we met through mutual friend Phil Castillo, who had introduced us. So certainly thanks to Phil for that. And also to help me with some intro comments. First one from Phil, who's a CRO at CommScope, says, I was fortunate enough to hire Vinay at Cisco and have watched him grow into one of the most effective executives there, helping them move into software and subscription offerings. So
well, that's cool kind of Phil. I learned a lot working for Phil back in the day. So I give him credit for some of my success, but that's nice.
Awesome. And Dave Hart, who was previously at Presidio, a lot of Cisco sales executives like to take credit for their tremendous success transforming from a hardware-driven to a software-driven company. The guy who's actually making this happen is Vinay. He's been Cisco's thought leader in the space for more than 5 years. He was a software guy at Cisco before software was cool. So
Dave is a great guy, and he's been a big part of our success. I think there's been a lot of people that have helped us succeed, and Dave's one of them, but that's also very nice of him to say.
Awesome. Great. And then Todd Meister, who's currently CRO at Neat.no, says, love Vinay, very much a professional, willing to get into the details as well as leading global strategy and always customer first. And then finally, Denzel Samuels, who is the global channel chief, says Vinay is a great guy, strong sales executive, has a great balance and is unflappable, which is a great quality for a strong sales exec. We have been to a few different countries, to a variety of partner forums. So Vinay is well versed with our partner ecosystem and speaking to our partners and leveraging our partners to help them and help us sell more. Also the opportunity to share fine wine and some good food with Vinay.
Well, Denzel knows his wines, so
there you go.
I got to give him credit for, like, I've shared fine wine with him, but he's selected them, and I just trust him with that decision.
Nice. All right. And so he'll be a great speaker for sure. So anyway, nice intro comments there.
I feel like, Randy, this has been a great call. We could just wrap it here. All these
we're good, done.
People say, like, we're good, like, done.
Exactly. All right. So jumping into our questions here. So you were a UCLA undergrad, 2000,
Yeah.
and your first job out of UCLA undergrad was actually as a channel SE at Cisco, right?
Yeah, if you don't count the time I spent delivering pizzas or selling home audio at Best Buy in high school and college, then I'd say my first real job, I came into Cisco nearly 24 years ago at the peak of the .com into what was then called the Associate SE program. So Cisco would take kids out of college that had no industry experience, train the heck out of them, and send them out to the field. So I did that, and I came out as a channel SE, got my CCIE very early, which is a big Cisco certification on the technical side. And in my mind, I was going to be at Cisco, give or take, like about 5 years. And here we are 24 years later.
Amazing. I mean, there's probably somebody, but I can't think of anybody that we've had on that's actually been full career just at one spot. And then along the way, you also went for a MBA at USC 10 years after you graduated undergrad. I know that's something people always kind of struggle with, especially on the go-to-market sales side, because a lot of times they say, well, you don't need it. What's the value? What was involved with you?
Well, so for me, I had, as we said, started my career as an engineer and then an engineering manager and leader. Excuse me. And I had wanted to transition to sales. And where I was in my career at the time, like you said, 7, 8 years in was when I started wanting to do that. I found I was encountering a lot of resistance in bias, right? Nothing to do with my capabilities or my personality, but it was just this bias that existed that said, hey, you're an engineer, you're trained in engineering, engineers can't do sales. And I thought that was nonsense. It was, to me, very simple. Like, I understood the technology, I connected well with customers, I think I communicate relatively well, and I could see what salespeople were doing. I was working with them every day as an engineer and an engineering leader, and I didn't think it was that hard. But the MBA was valuable. Sometimes people need branding to change perception, and the MBA gave me a little branding that, hey, I've done this business thing and I'm not just an engineer, and like, dude, give me a shot. And that was how that played out. And it allowed me to move into sales as Cisco was moving into the data center and about to launch a product I think you're familiar with called UCS, the server platform we brought to market.
Exactly. Yep. So the I'll say self-deprecating, you're leaving me off the hook, but the story behind the story was it was probably around 14, 15 years ago. HP was the server leader by far. Cisco is coming up with a new server product called UCS. I got cornered by Steve Burke at CRN, who's the one of the star riders there, and said, okay, Randy, come up with some bold prediction. So I said, a year from now, UCS is dead. And I would get reminders several times a year because there was this cartoon that you guys had with me quoting that. And
it was locker room like material for, like, when you said that, did you realize we were going to put it on every slide deck around the world for like 2 or 3 years in a row? Like, I mean, I'm sure maybe you wouldn't have said it, but I think your celebrity factor from like everybody referencing you was pretty big, right?
Yeah, it was. I'd get these pictures all the time. Hey, Randy, you're using it again, and we're using it again. But anyway, so, and yeah, huge credit to Cisco. You've probably overachieved even your initial high expectations to start with. So congrats for that.
Yeah, and it was a good. I mean, that quote aside, like building that and coming into the market with a new server platform, and a lot of customers saying, "Why do we need another server platform?" and showing how our innovation was different and growing it. At the time, I was focused on it in U.S. commercial. We grew it to $1 billion business in a couple of years. That was quite the ride, and I learned a lot from that then translated to what we've done with software. Right?
Awesome, very cool. And then along the way, I know you're passionate also about meditation, which in today's state of kind of crazy mental times, everything else is real helpful. Anything to share there?
Yeah, it's been a journey, right? And I find that, to your point, we live in a world with a lot of stimulus, whether it's, at work between meetings and email and instant messaging and like stimulus. And then, separate from work with things like social media and just the different modes of communication and information, it can be overwhelming. So for me, there's been a lot of value, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes. I use guided meditation apps to just get reconnected with your breath, really. And the power of that in settling your mind is significant. What I'll say on it is I've talked to a lot of people who will tell me, hey, I tried meditating, it didn't work. And my answer to them was, well, if you go to the gym once, do you see results?
Yeah.
There's a thing with it where you've got to build a routine and get into a practice. And it's amazing because I come and go from meditation, but when I get in a zone where I'm doing it 3 or 4 times a week for a lot of weeks in a row, like there's always this like deeper place you get to that I didn't even know I could get to. And it just sets me up to be grounded and be effective and be connected with people in a different way than when I'm overstimulated and kind of unsettled. Right. And again, some of those things, I'm almost not aware that I'm overstimulated and unsettled till I get to the other side. And in reflection, it's a bit of like, oh my God, what was going on there? Right?
Yeah, definitely good to help keep you grounded. I've got a kind of daily prayer book I use. It was given to you by advisory board member Rick Diana, and it's just good just a distraction, think about something else versus just the kind of normal rat race that you're in. So certainly good stuff. Is there a app in particular that you use?
Yeah, so I initially used Headspace, and that was very good. But then I eventually switched to Insight Timer, which also is very good and free. So that's the difference. Like Headspace subscription, Insight Timer free, although Insight Timer has paid options.
There
for me,
go.
the freebies work pretty well.
Awesome. Cool. All right. And as we go here, certainly feel free, anybody watching or listening along, to post any comments or any questions. So we have one from Mark Foley here. Curious if you've seen a level of trust between customers and the SE role, and then leveraging that for sales growth and expansion, since the SE can be a trusted advisor and not looked at the same as a seller. Additionally, giving sales skills to SEs can further that leverage. So certainly a lot there. I'll let you answer.
Yeah, it's a good multi-dimensional question, Mark. I would say big picture, independent of role, one of my core philosophies is customers fundamentally buy from people they like and they trust, right? Like you get those two things, assuming you've got competitive products and reasonable pricing, you're going to win. And often I've seen throughout my career, to your point, the level of trust customers have with SEs is often more and different than what they'll have with a salesperson, right? Because I think there's a purity in a lot of cases with engineers on wanting things to be technically right and a solution to meet the needs of the problem statement versus the pressure a salesperson has of having to make a number every month or quarter and meet a commit. I will say good salespeople, though, are able to prioritize and balance that pretty well in terms of caring about the customer and their outcomes versus having to get this deal on at this time. And again, it's a balance. But it's often because the pressure, the SEs are in a different place to deliver that. And when you get an SE who has the knowledge and can build that relationship and trust and also communicates very well, it can be very powerful. And I think some of our best customers over time, the relationship they've had with the SE has been one of the most significant pieces of that pie.
Yeah, definitely. And then is there anything special that Cisco does to kind of weed in kind of sales training type things to SEs, not just the technical training?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the areas Cisco as a big company does really well is the focus on enablement, right? So we have quarterly enablement and execution priorities, and there's training associated with that everybody goes through. There's general, and then there's specific to role. And a lot of it, again, for SEs, it's a balance of, okay, there's new products, there's these new security suites, hey, there's Splunk coming into the portfolio, what's that about? but then how do you position it? What do you need to know? And like, how do you have the customer conversation around it? And that's an ongoing focus. I think if you want to have an effective sales force, you have to empower and enable them with training and with tools, just in a market that is constantly changing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, great question, Mark. And I always found, I think you can always, kind of reorgs and rifts and things like that. Salespeople, I think, are somewhat expendable, but those, SE trusted relationships, especially a lot of larger tech companies, right? And they've been there forever. And those are the, not that salespeople aren't important, but those, trusted SEs are just, so vital to the relationship and the trust and figuring out, knowing the customer and what do they need and when do they need it and where are they going and all that.
Absolutely. And I've seen that same dynamic exist with really good salespeople as well, where that, that customer relationship and trust and reliability is really strong. It's different on the engineering side, to your point, but I have seen it exist in both places.
Awesome. And Ryan Batty, Ryan, good to I guess hear from you and see you a bit. What makes for an effective partnership with the marketing team in driving trust, pipeline, and revenue? What do you wish marketers would do more of or differently?
Yeah, it's another really good question, and I'm just taking a second to think, right?
Yeah.
And, this is not a canned executive answer, but I think part of the opportunity, most salespeople and sales leaders need help with is like, we know what good marketing looks like. We know what good pipeline and sales look like. How do you connect the two? Is the balance, right? So I think a good partnership with marketing, we obviously want to raise awareness of products and solutions in a way that aligns with the things customers are trying to solve for or trying to accomplish. And these days, there are so many ways to do that, between digital, between webinars, between in-person events. And, I think what I see is we do a good job of getting customers to attend that and have a good experience. How it flips into a pipeline opportunity that we wouldn't have had anyways is hard to quantify, but often what it'll do is it'll take something that was in play and increase our standing if we execute effectively. And so I think on the marketing side, it's really how you balance quantity with quality and link it to either identification or development of deals is kind of the secret sauce, right?
Yeah. A lot of times the gaps that I see is you have sometimes, I'll say, KPIs that are off, right? You've got marketing that says, hey, we're green on all these, KPIs and stats, and they might be more traditional, MQL, what they call marketing qualified leads, but then sales says, hey, they're not really, turning into SQLs and things that we really see. And a lot of times, I'm not saying this is at all for Cisco, but, probably more maybe medium-sized companies, but a lot of times the, sales leaders are always, being, driven hard around what's the revenue number going to be. They're, driving down on their OpEx and their spend, sometimes having to do cuts, and then kind of marketing has all this budget and all this money, and the sales teams are saying, what the heck, we got to get more. So, the best practice for sure is around kind of getting that alignment and making sure, balls don't get dropped, between that process, and making sure they're very focused in, what does good or great look like.
Exactly.
Gotcha. All right. Ryan says you can't see it, but I'm not nodding a lot. All right. Awesome. Ryan, thanks. All right. Thanks. Questions, keep questions and comments flowing. So, all right. So certainly we all know Cisco, but tell us about your role.
In my current role, if you go back, right, we talked a little bit about the engineering management, UCS, and data center. When I was doing the data center thing, I started to hear a lot of customers asking about cloud computing. And I'm talking about like back 2009, 2010, it was a newer concept back then. And I started to just dig into it in a way that I quickly became the expert on. And a couple of years later, our leader of US commercial, Allison Gleason, said, hey, Vinay, I want you to work for me and lead cloud and software for commercial. And I'm talking like 2013. And I said, well, I know what cloud means. I know what we're trying to do there, but what do you mean software? And she basically said, I don't know, but Chuck, who at the time was running sales, he wasn't the CEO yet, Chuck Robbins, he said, Chuck thinks it's going to be a big deal. I need you to figure it out, was where that started, right? And so I started with that then, and eventually we did figure it out, and I can go through what figuring it out looked like, because at the time we were very much a hardware company. But over time, I went from running cloud and software for US commercial to then basically being the software leader for the Americas as we leaned more heavily into software and really started to get some traction there. And 4 or 5 years ago, I became the VP of global software sales for Cisco. So in this role, what I do is I drive our go-to-market motions and transformation around software, specifically focused on buying programs, which are enterprise agreements, whole portfolio agreements. There's service provider agreements in there, but they're contractual agreements that allow customers a set of benefits for making commitments to our portfolio or portfolios. And that's a business that when I started with was in the ballpark of 500 million globally. And this year, we're in the end of our fiscal year, we'll finish north of $7 billion. So we've had a tremendous amount of growth on that journey as we've evolved offers, evolved processes, built specialist organizations, thought about customer success and adoption, leaned into the renewal motion. But at the core of it all has been our focus on our customer journey and how we bring value and simplification to them along the way.
Oh, great. So a lot to unpack there, but certainly we were talking before on the kind of the license aspects. So you kind of have a unique model where you don't necessarily kind of show up and say, hey, usage-based pricing, here's what you owe us for kind of going before. You kind of commit to what it's going to be going forward for a bit, right?
Yeah. So if I focus on enterprise agreements, right, which are probably the biggest and most at scale part of that business, what an enterprise agreement is a 3 or 5 year commitment to Cisco software, and it's structured in a way that's modular. So we have different architectures or portfolios: networking, security, collaboration, observability, services. And so customers can commit to those portfolios or subsets of them. And what they get a number of benefits when they do that. One of them is not to exceed pricing over the term of the agreement, right? So in recent years with inflation, we've all seen price increases. Customers in an EA are protected from price increases for what they've committed to, but also for their overconsumption. And what we do on overconsumption is this concept of true forward, which is different than a true up. As we got into doing EAs, customers told us, hey, Cisco, we love the concept, but don't do true ups. Other vendors, I won't name them, Randy, you can, but other vendors do this thing called true ups, which are awful in terms of audit and legal. And hey, you owe us money that we didn't know we owed them. Right. So what we do is we allow customers to overconsume. And then at the anniversary date, up to the anniversary dates, right? So up to a year, it's effectively at no charge. And then at the anniversary, it's a look forward, kind of reset the bar and address that on the entitlement. And that may not sound like a big deal, but for our customers, it's a really big deal in terms of their budget predictability and their experience with us. And again, we've been listening and responding and acting on what our customers tell us they need. And that's been really well received in the market.
Awesome. Great. Great way to partner for sure. So certainly a lot going really well. Any particular challenges that you're kind of working on?
Yeah, we've had a number of challenges over the years, and we are far from perfect today. I would say when you think about right now, our current EA model enterprise agreement is EA 3.0. So we've been from 1.0, which was really a couple of our technologies having custom agreements. And what our customers told us is like, hey, those are great, Cisco, but we don't want to feel like we're doing business with a bunch of your business units. We want to feel like we're doing business with one Cisco. So in 2.0, we started to bring that together as we brought networking and data center into the EA fold and got more unified there. But we still had things existing outside, and services didn't participate. And so now with 3.0, we really have everything in one coherent structure, one set of T's and C's, one contract. And as we've done that, our core challenges, I would say, one is just data quality, right? When you look at software usage across all these different products, they're measured and metered differently. And if you look at our customer hierarchies, things can get muddled in terms of how much is one customer using. So cleaning that up is an ongoing focus so that we can better give customers visibility to what they're using, and at renewal have a coherent conversation. So that's one we're continuing to try to get better at. And the second one would be how we do more meaningfully on helping our customers with software adoption, right? So it's great that we're landing these big contracts and getting customers to agree. And our renewal rates on EAs are actually much higher than a la carte software. But when they don't renew, the core thing we see is customers didn't get enough value out of what they bought. So we're really leaning in right now to look at how do we bring more rigor to that, not just from day one, but getting our teams organized with customer success while we're negotiating the deal to make sure customer success and partners are aligned on why is the customer buying the software, what do they want to get out of it, who do we need to engage with, and really get that in motion from day zero or day one versus reacting to it 6 months before a renewal date and realizing the customer didn't use X, Y, or Z, and now that's at risk.
And then besides I'll say current customers and focusing on the NRR net retention revenue, is there much focus on, I'll call it kind of net new or greenfield as well?
Absolutely. So when we look at, and when you think about greenfield for Cisco, there's some nuance to it in the sense that what is a greenfield customer? If I look at the Fortune 1000 or the top 5,000 accounts globally, 90+% of them have some Cisco. Like, it's really hard to actually find a customer that has zero.
That's why, yeah.
Across our portfolio. So when we think of greenfield, it's more about greenfield for the technology, right? So they might be a networking customer, and that's great, but are they a security customer, right? And so, you can think about that from an EA perspective on how do you cross-sell, but also security can be a different buying center. So in some cases, we have to treat it like a new agreement, right? And so when I think about new customers, there are net new customers, and we've been investing heavily in enabling our partners and distributors to lead the EA sale to help us reach places we haven't got to. And partners like Presidio and others have led the way there and been exceptional in driving that scale. As you get into the top tier of the pyramid, it's really about expansion and how do we use the renewal event to expand the contract? How do we leverage cross-sell opportunities to position new technologies and drive a bit of a different, sophisticated sales motion? And we've been good at doing it. What we're seeing is when we move a customer from a la carte to EA, their annual spend with us goes up 20 to 30%. The renewal rate of EAs is 20 to 30 points higher than a la carte. But then on renewal, we're seeing the EAs expand. And a lot of customers, when they get in that motion, they might buy an EA, let's say for collaboration. They'll quickly say, hey, I like this experience. I want this for your other technologies. And again, remember, they might be buying those other technologies piecemeal in an environment where they also buy other vendors. As we move them to an EA, we secure commitment in a way that is growth and advantageous to our business, right? So there's a lot of dimensions to it, but we drive a market motion there that I think is working well and has room for improvement.
And I have to imagine, given your diverse roles that you've had and being there for so long, half the battle's got to be kind of who's who in the zoo relative to getting in. It's somebody could come in net new and just be totally lost, but because you get how the business units are structured, how the sales teams are, how the customers are, kind of up and down the stack, and the leadership, you're able to kind of triangulate to really get the most leverage out of the Cisco machine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, unfortunately, we are more complicated than we should be, and I'd love for us to be simpler. But today, we have different licensing constructs for a lot of different products that exist under a lot of different product managers. And so navigating that would probably be overwhelming if you came in fresh from the outside. And then our go-to-market motions globally, with our segmentation and our partner coverage and the nuances of that, and how Asia is different than the Americas, it can be a lot. We have really good leaders in those markets that I work with to help us drive it. But yeah, it can be complicated. And having grown up in sales and, come from channels to commercial to data center to I have a little bit more knowledge of how to operate and also really good relationships with people around the company.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we have a couple comments here. Donna says, brilliant, true forward versus true up on the enterprise agreements. And then Ryan says, great move. Enterprise agreements are so much easier on customer procurement teams and more predictable for annual budgeting. So really cool. It'll be interesting to see some of these other companies follow suit. So anyway, getting back, talking about software sales success, you've also been one of the key leaders around the sales transformation effort, going from a product-centric approach to more of a customer use case-driven approach. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's an area, again, when you look at all the products in our portfolio, right, you have 5 or 6 major architectures underneath that, a number of subcomponents. And, from a sales point of view, I think the path to success is always focusing on the customer, not on the catalog, right? And so for us, being clear on what are the outcomes our customers want to achieve around observability, around hybrid work and return to office, around cybersecurity, AI in the network and automation, those are important things for us to understand. And then making sure that from a EA and buying program perspective, we have the right packaging around how you can buy those things together. But then 2, the right set of benefits on if you buy these things together, here's how we can accelerate your journey in a way that's different and better than if you were to buy things piecemeal, either from us or for others. And now, again, beyond that, how do we drive the right adoption motion and services construct around it? Those pillars have been important, right? And we saw that really emerge during the pandemic as we had a lot of customers quickly shift priorities from standing up and managing infrastructure to all of a sudden trying to enable hybrid work, and giving them the flexibility between on-prem and cloud to do that was top of mind as one example. So yes, I think we always, as sales leaders and salespeople, focus on the customer problem, the outcome, the solution, and then how you connect those dots, not just to your products, but to services and everything else to accelerate that journey is a good way to stand out and differentiate.
Yeah, that's awesome. Certainly a lot of great success. Any kind of 1 or 2 obstacles that you had along the way and how you resolved them?
Yeah, I mean, we've had very big obstacles along the way. I mean, I think a year and a half ago, we were very stalled with our execution of EA 3.0, which is now a multi-billion-dollar offer, because there was some internal debate and I think misalignment around to what extent should we lean into that versus start designing the next big great thing, right? And so my point of view was if we executed 3.0, we'd be in pretty good shape. And if we tried to build the next big thing, that would take years. So we had to really lean in internally, again, rooted to what customers valued, their use cases, their desires, to kind of have that debate and bring data to it to help bring people along. And it wasn't one of, I think it's often the case, probably at many companies, that winning the debate wasn't a black and white, okay, we'll do this. But what we managed to do is secure some commitment to invest a little more in 3.0 than what we were getting. And with that, we made damn sure we delivered results. And as we delivered results, then it was, okay, we get a little more. And then over time, that just became, to use a Mandalorian reference, this is the way. I don't know if you watch that show at all, Randy, but I've got young kids, so we watch shows like that. This is.
Awesome. Really cool. And along the way, I'm sure you've had some great mentors. Any kind of one or two nuggets that you could think of in terms of advice you've received?
I think I've had a number of good mentors along the way. Like early in my career, when I became an engineering manager, my hiring senior engineering manager was a gentleman by the name of Sean Willie, who went on to be CEO of Proofpoint and now New Relic. And I think, what I learned from him, I was always, I would always say I was always a little bit book smart, but he really infused the importance of passion to things. And Sean was always very passionate about technology and customers, and that was inspiring to me. I talked about Allison in commercial, just giving me the opportunity to do things transformational that I think I was really good at, and has been a springboard to where I am today. And I think with Allison, she was both really difficult and really amazing to work for, because she was very demanding. But in her demandingness, if you could rise to meet the demands, then that was fun, because she would make things happen as a result of that. So I learned a lot there. And then I think, recently I worked for Mark Dodds, who just recently moved on, and he's now the chief revenue officer of Elastic. And, Mark was just such an exceptional people person and so charismatic and down to earth in spite of the big jobs and big things he was doing. And I learned a lot just interacting with him, right? I think everybody you interact with, you learn something from, either what to do or what not to do. And those three, I learned a lot of what to do from.
Awesome. That was Mark who?
Dodds.
Dodds, all right. Awesome. Very, very cool. And then Ryan chimes in. I worked with Ashan too. He's a great exec and great person.
I agree, Ryan.
There you go. And then what about in terms of sales leaders you've been exposed to, like just, kind of so many, great ones? Any in particular you want to give shout outs to?
Well, I would say those three were three great sales leaders. I also, like, my current boss is fantastic, Chris Heckscher, leading services and software.
There you go.
Globally for Cisco. And I think Chris is just really down to earth and cares about people. And I think really, really curious, and in a way that I think keeps the organization and keeps people interested and paying attention to details in a really constructive and healthy way. Like, he'll ask a lot of questions, but you never doubt that he has your back and is trying to help the company and you win. And I think that's a good environment to operate in, and it's a reminder of the environment you want to give your teams.
Awesome. And Ryan's on a roll here. He says, Randy, is this where we talk about McNeely, who's Scott McNeely, who Ryan and I had the pleasure of working with at Sun, who's certainly a great leader in his own right. We'll focus on you here. So with your kind of software business.
If you want to have a Scott McNeely story, go for it. Like, I got
some I can talk about, some I can't talk about. But kind of from a kind of generating leads perspective, you're basically leveraging, it seems like, most of Cisco engine, Cisco, kind of customers, which kind of maybe makes life a little bit easier. Do you still have traditional kind of, cold calling and things like that you have people doing?
So not as much, right? Because if you think about the EA motion, we're trying to take a customer to full commitment. Yeah. And a customer doesn't usually go from 0 to full commitment, right? So we've got, and again, Cisco's a multi-dimensional sales machine, but we've got portfolio and architecture specialist teams out there who are out, like, carrying the flag on getting a customer started with new technology XYZ. What we are usually doing is then taking them from that getting started to all in, right? And so I will say, though, that within that, we do think about and lean into how we generate and grow pipeline, because that, like, sales 101, if you want to, like, bookings to me are a lagging indicator. Right. So, like, what do you do to get in front of that? I would say pipeline is more intermediate, but even before pipeline, there are other things you want to do. One of the things we're leaning into right now if you think like Cisco's software business overall, not just buying. So buying programs today make up over 40% of Cisco's software, up from 10% just a few years ago. But that still means there's a lot of software that's not in the buying program. And what we see is that, as I said, the renewal rates on buying programs are a lot higher. What that means is we've got a lot of attrition risk on the rest of the software. And one of the great selling events for an EA is a renewal date. When that 1 year small buy is coming up, how do we upsell it to a 3 or 5 year commit that is much bigger in annual value? And so we're putting a lot more rigor right now to lean into the renewal event, the renewal data, the renewal pipeline, and how we convert that to EA. And what we found is to do it effectively, you've got to start the conversation 6 to 12 months ahead of renewal. Right. And so again, within Cisco, you've got customer success teams, you've got renewal teams, you've got partners, you've got sales. So how we thread that motion and come with the right value prop at the right time to move it. And again, hopefully we've done a good job driving adoption, but if we haven't, we want to engage earlier. So make sure the customer sees value in it. There's a lot there that we're doing, but at the end of the day, what we find is if we can convert 20 or 30% of that a la carte software to EA, it flips Cisco's attrition risk down in a way that is unbelievably large in terms of like bookings and revenue impact. Like when you start doing the math, and I won't take you through it because it'll be a lot to take in, but there's a lot there that we can affect not just for our number, but for really the company's health overall that we're really leaning into as we speak.
Gotcha. And then in terms of I'll call it the sales tech stack, unlike a lot of companies that have, I'll say the different, kind of maybe stovepipe solutions, the approach Cisco seems to be a lot more just to leverage the broad Salesforce portfolio.
Yeah, I would say from a pipeline and opportunity management and, managing sales stages and sales cycles, it's very Salesforce centric. And within that, we're doing a lot with the sales console piece of it to really bring the right dashboarding visibility and awareness to different sales teams. And again, we've got a lot of different sales teams. So how we make sure the right information gets to the right people at the right time and it's actionable in the right way. We're doing a lot of that through Sales Console, and we're having some success with it.
Oh, great. So a question from John, curious on a different note, with Cisco being so big and somewhat confusing on the inside, maybe political ? How do you suggest a sales leader from a faster, more nimble, more aggressive company like Palo, CrowdStrike, Fortinet, or Zscaler adapt to the Cisco culture?
Okay, so I would first of all,
that could be his perception. So you can.
It could be your perception, John. I would challenge you to not just assume that we are especially not aggressive. I think we would like to be faster and more nimble. What I've found, I'm just going to riff on this for a second, is in the industry, and this probably exists with a lot of large companies. Randy, you may have experienced at HP. There's a lot of bias from smaller tech companies and startups that because a Cisco and maybe an HP is bigger and slower, that the people have characteristics that are different, right? And I would just challenge everybody to just second guess that assumption, right? I think there's a lot of people at Cisco that are smart, and probably at HP and probably at Dell, and you name the big company, that are smart, aggressive, effective, and could be quite fast, nimble, and aggressive at a smaller company, and vice versa. I think, John, the keys to success as a human being are how you communicate, how you listen, how you prioritize, how you execute. And at the end of the day, if you can listen to customers, understand their needs, prioritize that, influence others to get on board, and manage execution and teamwork, I don't think that is different at company X, 10-person company versus 100,000-person company. Mm-hmm. What's different probably at a Cisco is because of our size, we have, and I've had a lot of friends that have gone back and forth, and this is what they tell me, is, Vinay, you don't realize the resources you have that you can leverage for execution on the marketing, on the HR, on the finance side that don't exist elsewhere. Like here, you got to do everything yourself to a certain extent. But then I think the vice versa is true. Like, again, if you can get stuff done, you figure it out, right? And part of having all those resources is sometimes things are a little slower because you got to spend time aligning priorities between a lot of different groups. But how you do that and how you align priorities at a customer are actually not very different. I don't know, Randy, if you have a perspective on that, because I know you've done the big company thing as well. But
yeah, I mean, it's funny. You hear, some of the big company, they complain about this or that. I'm like, okay, well, until you go to a small company, you really can't appreciate and understand all the help that you really do get. And I think a lot of times the bigger companies, they kind of just take all the resources for granted. And then another thing too, that's a huge benefit is, and I know Cisco is one of the was the earliest and probably the best and the biggest leveraging the channel partner ecosystem. I mean, just that help and support that you get. I mean, you have literally unlimited resources, right? If you want help on an account, you name it, you got it, right? People are lined up to help and support. So just so huge, which at a small company you don't necessarily get. But John, thanks for the question. Appreciate it. Then I know too, from an outside resource perspective, you do a lot, kind of Cisco does a lot in-house, but I think you've leveraged Alexander Group, you're saying before, for some things as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, so it kind of goes back to, yes, we're a big company. Yes, we have a lot of resources. But when we started down the software journey, we didn't really know what that was going to be. And we had to kind of figure it out startup mode within the big company. And so we leveraged Alexander Group as one great example to help us think through, what is a good software company recurring revenue model look like? How do we have to think about a sales go-to-market differently? A whole set of things that we just didn't have experience with. And they were very helpful in helping us think through those things. And there's a lot of good knowledge and data and just everything there that it was really, really valuable for us to get that perspective.
Cool. Yeah, certainly great group and sales community sponsor as well. Ryan asked another question. What are some examples of the sales go-to-market productivity tools your team uses that you think are innovative and or add value? I'm a fan of Gong, for example. I think you're kind of the short answer there is you're really kind of leveraging, as you mentioned before, the broad kind of Salesforce solution stack, correct?
Yeah, and then we've got some EA specific sales tools internally that we've been iterating and innovating around to make them easier and to leverage better insight to identifying opportunities. And I think there's more we probably can do there. With AI specifically. I was reading something today, just randomly on I think it was one of the investment banks, but how they're going to use AI with their investment advisors to take notes, summarize calls, formulate action item emails, et cetera, et cetera. I read that and I'm like, well, we could probably benefit from that as well. That would be a big time saver. So I think there's a lot to explore there and we could probably do more than we're doing. And it's something I'm starting to think about.
Definitely. And Ryan, I'm a fan of Gong as well. So now maybe shifting here on the talent, kind of people side, certainly a lot to do and a lot to be done. Any kind of best practices there as you look at kind of assessing kind of the talent and skill sets that you have, and then I'll say maybe ongoing training or kind of managing people up to improve skill sets.
Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, our talent is how we make things happen, right? We drive success and results through the power of our teams. And so from a, recruitment perspective, I've found that we have had a lot of success getting talent of different backgrounds together, right? So if I just look at the makeup of my current and previous teams, I've had sales leaders come into software sales lead roles and be successful. I've seen people come from consulting, from finance, from engineering, and bring a different perspective that's helped us drive success. And so kind of going back to that bias of an engineer can't do sales, I am very anti that approach. And I really find really good people in different backgrounds that help us move this business forward. And then I think in conjunction with that, from a development perspective, how you give people the right stretch opportunities to do different things and apply their skill sets and knowledge in different ways is one of the best ways to grow that talent, keep them interested and motivated, because now they're solving a new problem, and they're going to solve it in a way that is not the way somebody else would have solved it, especially somebody in more a linear path. So it leads to people talk about inclusion and diversity, and I think that's really important. But if you really get that right, the diversity and approach expands the capacity of the team and the capacity of the business to solve problems in a way that I think is really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, time flies here when you're having fun. So Vinay, you've been amazing. Thanks for those that have chimed in. And as always, Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Thanks to Fund Ready Leads for being our sponsor. This gets recorded and replayed across all the different social mediums. So feel free to anybody watching to go ahead and share with others. Just lots of fantastic nuggets here for sure, Vinay. So thanks so much for that.
Well, thank you, Randy. It's been a great conversation. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I'm happy to be a part of episode 172 out of what will be thousands.
There you go. We'll see if I last that long. And we're taking a break next week for July 4th. And then July 10th, have Chris Scanlon, who's CRO at Human, who, interestingly enough, his title is Sales Leadership at Small versus Large Companies. And great lineup going forward from there, which everybody can see on Sales Community. So everybody have a great week. And Sabrina chimed in and said, great session, Vinay and Randy. So thanks for that. So, all right, Vinay, thanks so much.